Everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is A.R. Grimes. I am the author of Wyldling Snare, a YA portal fantasy set on a world called Tahara with a link to Earth, and it links to the state of Wisconsin, which is where I live. And I'll be reading to you tonight a little excerpt, like from the very beginning, and then I'll jump just a little bit into the book and read the first part of the present chapter. All right. Wyldling Snare. One moon ago. Sword dance. I love learning about unknown places, said the maiden in the dark blue armor. She traced the curved outline of the map in his book. What is this world called? Tahara. It's where I live. Wind gusted through the training grounds, damp and chill. Winter was reluctant to release its hold on the northern marches. Enoch northward shivered as an icy tendril of air slipped around his neck, driving away thoughts of dream conversations with maidens in dark blue armor. Sweat coated his torso underneath his tunic and leather breastplate. On either side and behind him, uniformed men posed in their own private bubbles of perdition. The Baron Knight called out, "Wind of death!" He swung his body into a loose, wide stance using fluid, sweeping movements. He ended with one leg back, his sword raised and angled to the left. Around Enoch, cloth rippled, and men groaned or sighed as they moved. None of them counted sweating while freezing in the chilly wind amongst their favorite activities, but Enoch wanted to impress his guardian. He must endure, just as the grown men did. He'd be 16 in another moon and eligible for knighthood within a cycle, if he mastered all the sword forms and performed according to the Baron Knight's code. Then he'd help Sir Rick and Sir Thomas govern the northern marches. He changed his stance from the 8th to the 9th sword form, mirroring his guardian. Too beggaring slow, he groused, eyeing the others, who snapped into the last position 2 seconds ahead of him. Every muscle burned from holding 8 different stances for 3 minutes apiece. Sir Rick ran the drills because Commander Storm was off somewhere in the eastern marches. Praise Ishwa, Commander Storm would have insisted I hold each stance for at least 5 minutes. His arms trembled, and he scrunched his nose to prevent his spectacles from sliding. He must make it through the entire drill. If he couldn't, he'd never be a true warrior. "Sentinels rest," Sir Rick announced. He set his feet shoulder-width apart, sword hilt clasped in both hands in front, blade pointing downward. The others mimicked him. Final stance, Enoch thought. Praise Ishwa. He tried not to slam the sword tip into the earth between his feet. 3 minutes dragged by. A drop of sweat traced its way down his back. Sir Rick stood like a statue in front, eyes fixed on a point beyond the troopers. At length his expression relaxed. "At ease," he said. "Well done, men." They saluted him with a fist held against their chests. "Dismissed. Enoch, walk with me." The Baron Knight smiled and beckoned him. With a sigh, Enoch slid his sword into its scabbard and staggered over to his guardian. His limbs still felt wobbly. Enoch's best friend, Simon Halloway, waved at him as the troopers filed out of the arena for wall patrol duty. Grateful to stretch his muscles, Enoch returned the wave and then fell in step beside his guardian. A cool breeze brought him the scent of thawing earth. Enoch glanced at his guardian's face, the sepia skin weather-beaten into leather above his salt and pepper beard. Brown eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. How was it this time? He glanced at his boots and concentrated on not stumbling. I can't keep up with the others. Bitterness crept into his tone. I'm too small. Sir Rick raised his eyebrows. I don't believe that'll be a problem forever. You've not reached your full growth yet. He patted Enoch's shoulder. You're coming along well, lad. I notice how hard you work. Enoch cracked a smile. Thank you, sir. So, tomorrow you and Raiden leave for Treehome. Sir Rick lifted his face to the clear sky and breathed deeply. It's bound to be a pleasant day, the first since the equinox. I've excused you from the rest of your duties. I reckon you have plans? Enoch grinned. Yes, sir. He fished a piece of paperboard out of his belt pouch and handed it to his guardian. The maidens three have extended their customary picnic invitation. The Baron Knight examined the invitation and hummed. Miss Cartwright's calligraphy is improving, he noted with a smile, and Miss Jolson draws a very fine picnic tableau. He snorted. What's this now? Join us, Enoch, or be forever sundered from our company. Miss Pines has mastered the art of hyperbole quite nicely. He chuckled and returned the invitation to Enoch. You youngsters have been doing this since you were 12, over 4 turnings now. I hope to see this tradition continue. It's good for you to stay connected to the crofter folk. Enoch frowned. Why in Tahara wouldn't he? The knights frequently mingled with the crofter folk while executing their duties. He opened his mouth to ask, but before he got his question out, his stomach growled. Sir Rick threw back his head and laughed, a rich and carefree booming sound that rolled through the grounds. He pulled a packet wrapped in butcher's paper out of his satchel. Here, Enoch, this should tide you over for another hour. Sheepishly, Enoch stuffed the invitation in his belt pouch. I won't take your breakfast, sir. I'll scrounge through the kitchens. Patsy will give me something. Sir Rick pulled out a similarly wrapped package, his eyes dancing. I came prepared. You have no excuse now. Take it. Enoch needed no further prompting. He and his guardian munched their sausage rolls in companionable silence. When they reached the manor, Sir Rick clapped a hand on Enoch's shoulder. Clean up and then go enjoy yourself, lad. There are several troopers who served under Sir Nicholas transferring here, and I have paperwork to wrangle. He sighed and scrubbed a hand over his face to hide the grief. Nick was a good man. Lord Ishwa rest his soul. He didn't deserve to fall to base treachery. He shook his head. I pray Commander Storm's investigations yield fruit. The last lump of food stuck in Enoch's throat, and he swallowed. Sorrow swept through him like the icy breeze. Nicholas and many of his elite warriors had died trying to suppress an uprising in the eastern marches. Praise Yeshua, we don't have those sorts of troubles here, Sir Rick. I don't know what I'd do without you. I don't know what I'd do without you, the only father I've ever known. His guardian smiled and drew Enoch into an one-armed hug, shaking him. Carry on as usual, I'd imagine. He pushed Enoch away and winked. Now, lad, what have I told you to do, always, whatever challenges may come? Sun's light broke through the clouds. Enoch grinned as he shaded his eyes. This is easier than sword forms. Like I'd ever forget. Seek justice, show mercy, walk humbly with Lord Ishwa. Skipping ahead a month, an ill wind. Death from above. The soot panther fell upon them in utter silence. One moment, Enoch led his riding deer along the trail, digging in his pelt pouch for mint leaves, and the next, a dark-furred predator dropped from the branches above onto the back of his companion's mount. Enoch gasped, Red! Behind you! The Lord Seneschal, Raiden von Bleistaff, dropped the bridle and whirled around, staff in hand. His emerald eyes, wide and wild, stood out in stark contrast to his white furred face. "Stay back, Enoch!" Enoch stumbled backwards, fumbling for his sword. The contents of his belt pouch spilled, and his mount trampled it, struggling to escape from the fanged menace. The pungent scent of mint filled the air. His mount dragged him from the trail before jerking her bridle from his hands. Enoch let her go. His stomach, upset from traveling through the waystone, lurched. He choked back the bile rising in his throat and ripped the sword from its sheath, scanning the forest for other threats. I let down my guard. Should have known better. The caravan route is outside the vale. Good thing I have Red with me. Red jabbed at the soot panther. The wily beast dug its claws into its prey and flung itself to one side, putting the mount's bulk between itself and Red. Squealing, the riding deer bucked to dislodge the predator. The soot panther clamped its powerful jaws on the riding deer's neck. Crack! The mount went limp and collapsed on the trail. The limber feline twisted to avoid entanglement with its limbs. It fixed Red in its amber gaze and crouched, preparing to spring. Quicker than thought, Red spun and slammed the iron-shod butt of his staff against the soot panther's head. Stunned, the beast dropped like a stone. Red stabbed it at the base of its skull with his sky iron's hunting knife and severed the spine. Enoch flinched. Bloody knife in one hand, staff in the other, Red backed away from his kill with black-tipped ears raised and his tail rigid. He licked the blood from the blade while scanning the edges of the trail and the canopy above. Enoch sheathed his sword and joined his friend, skirting the dead mount. He hunkered beside the slain beast. The soot panther appeared less formidable with its fierce amber eyes glazed in death, but the bared fangs were the length of a man's finger. Gingerly, he rested a hand upon its dark gray flank. How could a vicious animal have soft fur? Red slid his hunting knife into its sheath on his belt. Enoch, one sends nothing, but others may soon come for the dead. Soot panthers are tricky and scary fast. He chuckled past the unease in his gut. No way I could ever move fast enough to kill one. I'm glad you're on my side, Red. Red bowed his head, his ears drooping. Forgiveness. Your servant should have moved faster. He suffers from the Waystone sickness, but this is no excuse. Enoch smiled and patted his arm. Don't worry. We'll be more careful in the future. Everything will be better when we get home. Enoch tugged on the halter of his lame mount, encouraging her to pick up the pace. Riding Deer shook her head, snorting, and then trotted along behind him. He didn't dare ride her, not after she'd spanged her fetlock trying to flee while the soot panther killed her mate. Instead, he'd placed the pack containing the gifts for his friends from Tree Home on her back, a much lighter burden than an adolescent boy's weight. He scanned the tree along the road, leaves unfurled from the buds now that winter had gone to its grave. However, the fresh growth made use of panthers to ambush unwary travelers. We have seen since, praised Zikra. The first sun, Clotho, had set. Chessus was soon to join her, but the heat of late spring lingered. He wiped the sheen of sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief damp from frequent use. The sweet, heavy scent of peonies grew cloying in his nostrils. Wow, he remarked. If the flowers smell strong to me, then they must be overwhelming you, Red. Are they giving you a headache yet? No response. Red? With a frown, he turned to check on his companion. Despite the perils lurking in the surrounding woods, Red had stopped. Ears raised to the fullest extent, he stared into the canopy. His black nose twitched as he scented the air. Red? Enoch scanned the surrounding woods for signs of danger. He licked his lips and tasted it. Is it another soot panther? No. Red swiveled his ears toward the northeast, toward Lilac Grove. Home. Someone is coming, Enoch, he replied, rolling his staff between hands and creating a divot in the trail. Who? Sirex's messenger. Red's whiskers twitched as he scowled. For goodness sake, he muttered in his native tongue. They have sent Peter. He is. He closed his eyes. He is like. Grimacing, he dug his nails into the wood of his staff. He is like the wind, blowing sickness upon everything it touches. Enoch gaped at him for a moment, and then he laughed aloud, slapping his thighs. That's a new one. Nice try, Red. Did you mean to say, an ill wind that blows no good? Red nodded. Yes, Enoch, those words describe Peter to perfection. Enoch huffed out a brief laugh. But, Red, that isn't fair. You can't say Peter always brings bad news. There was one time, he paused, listening to the faint sound of approaching wing beats. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, Peter, we're down here. A piercing cry answered his call, and a creature with a 10-foot wingspan plummeted through a gap in the branches to alight in front of them. Enoch hopped back. If it weren't for the brazen pink color of his feathered equine forequarters and furred feline hindquarters, and his brown eyes filled with friendly, gleeful mischief, Peter would be downright terrifying. Presently, he displayed none of his usual spunk and humor. Ears drooped, the Syrinx panted with his tongue dangling from his orange beak. The pink feathers of his front half were disarrayed after plunging through the clutching branches, and several drifted lazily to the ground. Having caught his breath, he shook his wings and then furled them. Locks! Peter exclaimed, eyes wide and tail lashing. Eenie, you're a hard person to find. I'm about done in. I've been looking for you and the seneschal forever and ever. Red bristled as he stalked up to the messenger. Peter, have you a message from Sir Frederick? Report it to this one at present. The Syrinx hunkered and stared up at the Cainhir with his ears laid back and eyes round and glistening. Unease slithered inside Enoch. What in Tahara could render the normally garrulous Peter speechless? Peter's orange beak opened and closed several times before words came out. Not from Sir Rick, he gabbled, unsheathing and then sheathing his talons. Can't be from Sir Rick. Can't be. Cappy sent me. I have to find Sir Thomas first. But I can't find him. He's gone. 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 I'm supposed to find you next. Only I didn't know if you all are still in Tree Home or if Red cuffed him. Arrive at the peak. Peter squawked and hunkered until his belly touched the ground. Eenie, he whimpered. Eenie, what's he mean? What's he mean? Enoch rubbed the back of his neck. He means you should get to the point, Peter. He crouched beside the Syrinx and patted his feathery mane in what he hoped was a reassuring manner. Just breathe, slow down, and tell me the message. Peter glanced from one to the other, his eyes brimming with tears. Okay, Eenie, but it's bad news. Real bad. He curled in his talons and tucked his front paws under his chest, shuffling his feline hindquarters under his belly and then curling his tail against his torso. Bad news? The chill of foreboding crept up his spine like a stalking soot panther. He'd never seen Peter so upset. What cruel tidings did he bring? Had a storm destroyed the Crofter folks' homes? Were the newly sprouted crops ruined? Did a roving pack of Lycarum breach the Vale? Or worse, had the Nemwites invaded the northern marches? Enoch gulped, recalling every horrific, spine-tingling story he'd ever heard about the belligerent race dwelling far to the north in the Ice Mountain wastes. Are we at war with the Nemwites, Peter? He looked at the seneschal. Red gazed back at him with his mouth set in a grim line gripping his staff in both his hands. Eyes wide, Peter blurted out, "Edie, you and the seneschal better come home quick. We can't find Sir Thomas, and Sir Rick is dead." And that's where I'll stop. If you are interested in finding out what happens next, Wyldling Snare is available in ebook and paperback formats on Amazon, and it's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a subscription, you can read it for free. And in case you were wondering, this is a series. And the next book is called Wyldling Trials, and it's available for pre-order on Amazon, the ebook. It should be publishing it probably in late August, early September. So I had a lot of fun reading that. When does it come out? Um, Wyldling Trials, I believe I haven't really I set the date as in October because I wasn't sure, but I'm thinking more like September-ish or even I'm really my stretch goal is August 25th, which is mine and my husband's wedding anniversary because it has to be a special date, right? Are there any other questions? How did I pick the accents? Um, well, Red has always had kind of a it's supposed to be a German accent, but I can't really distinguish it from a Russian accent, so it comes out kind of East European sounding. Um, it's just it's just seemed to suit him. And Sir Rick has a really deep voice, and it's Enoch is supposed to sound like a Midwesterner because where he lives, the Northern Marches is kind of similar to Wisconsin. Um, so everybody kind of sounds like a Midwesterner. And Peter is supposed to be like this annoying, he's a griffin-like creature and he's like a chatterbox and um but he's also very sweet and funny. So, do I have a favorite Malifor? Oh, how can I choose? Um I do use them a lot in Wieldling Snare. Whenever Red is in a scene, he usually says one, but I like it's like you are hitching your goat to the wrong post. I don't know what that one's supposed to be, but I just like saying it. Um, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, yeah, thank you for having me, Catherine. It was so much fun. I hope to come back again and talk about something else. Thank you.